Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the Backroad Star. How's everybody's week starting out? Before we get started, if you found your way here, trust there's a reason. Take what resonates, leave what doesn't. And if these conversations speak to your heart, I'd be grateful if you'd like, comment, or subscribe. It helps more beautiful souls find their way to this campfire and reminds the algorithm that honest conversations still matter. A safe place to finally say things out loud. This past weekend, I attended a family reunion at the lake. One of my favorite moments happened long before sunset. I spent a couple of hours sitting on a towel near the water. The day had been partly cloudy, keeping the Oklahoma 90-degree heat from becoming overwhelming. I could hear the waves rolling on the shore. I could hear children playing nearby. Some of them belonged to my cousins. Some belonged to my cousins' children. Generations of family gathered together in one place. For a little while, there was nowhere to be. There was nothing for me to accomplish, nothing to fix, nothing to write, edit, or produce. Just the sound of water, laughter, and life happening around me. As evening approached, I looked up at the sky and I quietly said a prayer. The full moon was scheduled to rise later that night, and I had brought all of my camera gear hoping to photograph it. We were hours away from city light pollution, and I knew the conditions could be incredible if the clouds would cooperate. After supper, a few of us took a walk through the campground. As we walked, I glanced over to the western horizon. The clouds were gone, every single one of them. I immediately turned and ran toward my car to grab the camera gear before the sunset disappeared. Now, this side of my family has always been defined by sports. My father wasn't the only coach in this family. There were a few. Athletics were simply part of our family culture. Many of us were blessed with natural athletic ability and talent. I played basketball. So when I came running back through the campground carrying camera bags and a tripod, one of my uncles started laughing. He shook his head and said, I never saw you run that fast during a game for your dad. Everybody laughed. I did too. But then I saw them turn back, started watching the Thunder basketball game. I set up my camera and I began live streaming the sunset. While the camera rolled, I wandered around taking photographs. A couple sitting quietly together watching the sun disappear. One of my second cousins sitting alone, staring out across the water as the sky turned gold. Another second cousin I held as a baby in my arms, standing beside her husband while their 3 little ones proudly attempted to help their daddy fish. Simple moments, ordinary moments, the kind of moments that become memories before you even realize they are happening. When the sunset finally faded, I turned around toward the east. The moon was going to start to rise above the trees any moment. I moved my tripod, switched to a telephoto lens on my camera, and prepared for more photos. Long after my family members started gathering around, aunts, uncles, cousins, children, everyone taking turns through the lens. One by one, they stepped forward to see details on the moon most people never notice. The craters, shadows, and texture, they're now defined. The nodes now visible. The desolate beauty. I was picking up little one after little one so they could see in the eyepiece. They looked through the lens for a moment, then that look of astonishment on their faces when they turned back to me. One pulled back and said something I probably will never forget. God does amazing work. Yes, he does. As the evening wound down and people slowly returned to their campsite, I also found myself thinking about something. It was 30 years ago. I was a teenager lying on a basketball court with a damaged knee. At the time, I had no idea that injury would follow me for decades. I had no idea it would lead to surgeries, physical therapy, arthritis, or years of learning lessons I wasn't ready to learn. Yet here I was, walking along the lakeshore, in the water swimming, chasing toddlers all day, carrying camera gear, chasing sunsets and moonrises, surrounded by family, making memories, living. And it hit me. The goal was freedom. The freedom to participate in my own life. Movement isn't just about moving our bodies. It's about being able to show up for our lives. It's about being present for the moments that matter, the conversations, the sunsets, the family reunions, the quiet evenings, the unexpected memories that seem ordinary until years later when you realize they were never ordinary at all. That's when I realized something else. Movement isn't just about exercise. Sometimes movement is self-care. Movement is healing. Sometimes movement is one of the ways we honor the body that carries us through this life. We've talked a bit about healing and awareness, routines, and learning how to become more present in our daily lives. Tonight I want to talk about a form of self-care that many of us overlook: movement. Not because we're trying to become someone else, not because we're chasing perfection, not because we're trying to earn our worth, but because our bodies deserve care too. The body that carries our stress, the body that carries our responsibilities, the body that carries our grief, carries our healing, the body that carries us through every mile of this journey. For many of us, movement has become optional. We sit more than any generation before us. We work at computers. We drive instead of walk. We spend hours looking at screens. And somewhere along the way, many of us stop moving the way our bodies were designed to move. Not because we're lazy, not because we don't care. Life simply got busy. And before we knew it, years had passed, maybe even decades, until one day our bodies started asking for our attention. Because movement isn't just about adding years to our lives. Sometimes it's about adding life to our years. Months of physical therapy awaited me after my shoulder surgery. Then another MRI on my right knee revealed massive amounts of scar tissue from a basketball injury that happened in January of 1996, my senior year of high school. I remember that moment clearly. I went up for a rebound on the court, came down, felt a pop, a twist, and my knee buckled beneath me. Laying on that gym floor, one thought raced through my mind: it's over. I wasn't as worried about the injury as I was relieved. By my senior year, I had already started to hate basketball. As a coach's daughter, the game had become something I endured, a family business, a responsibility more than a game I enjoyed. I thought maybe this injury was a way out, but it wasn't. After sitting out one game, the only game I ever sat out, I strapped ice braces to my knee during school, elevated it whenever I could, and wore another brace during practices and games as we headed toward the playoffs. I finished the season. I graduated. I moved on. Or at least I thought I did. The truth is, that injury followed me into adulthood. In my 20s, I noticed the extra weight. I tried different activities, sports, and hobbies, believing I simply wasn't as active as I used to be, but my knee would flare up. Walking became difficult. The swelling and pain would return, and I'd take more ibuprofen than I'd care to admit just now to get through the day. Eventually, I stopped trying, not because I consciously decided to. Life got busy. I worked. Then I worked 2 jobs. Then I became a mother. Then I started college and worked. There was always a reason, always an excuse. I never sat still. But I wasn't taking care of my body either. I wasn't moving through life, but I wasn't moving for my health. When you're young, you assume your body will always do what it's always done. You believe you'll have time later, someday. Later and someday, they never arrive. The perfect moment never comes. I could carry groceries from the car, but I couldn't bend down and touch my toes. I could work long hours, but climbing stairs hurt like hell. Every year my knee felt stiffer, weaker, and more unstable. Sometimes it would simply give out while I was standing still. 27 years after that injury, I found myself sitting in another doctor's office facing another surgery. It was only 3 months after my shoulder surgery. The MRI was fascinating, honestly. The original injury was still there, but now there was more damage spreading outward from it, like rivers and creeks branching from a lake. The doctor walked me through the images. There was the original tear, then another tear that occurred as it was healing. Then those tears started to heal, but another one, and another, and another, and another. This pattern continued for inches away from the original injury. Years and years of re-injury. Years of compensation. Years of my body trying to adapt around damage that never fully healed. Scar tissue had formed everywhere. Arthritis had settled in. What started as a single injury in 1996 had quietly become a roadmap of every time I pushed through pain, ignored the warning signs, and kept going. Looking at those images felt strangely symbolic. The damage wasn't caused by one moment. The damage was caused by years of trying to live as though that moment had never happened. The surgery cleaned things up, but it didn't fix my knee. What could help, they told me, was strength. Not another surgery, not another pill. Strength. I was told to limit standing, protect the joint, and strengthen the muscle surrounding it. Back to physical therapy I went. Not just exercises for my knee, but exercises for my entire body to prevent future injuries. Arthritis in my ankles, arthritis in my knees, arthritis in both shoulders. The orthopedic surgeon laughed and said, "You must have been an athlete. Right-handed, I bet." I smiled. And I said, "Yes, I was a coach's daughter." That was all I said. What I didn't say was that I would spend years paying the bills for my avoidance. I started those exercises sitting on the edge of my bed with resistance bands. Stretching was unbelievably hard. I was stiff. I was sore. Everything felt tight. But I never quit. I stretched before getting out of bed. I stretched when I came home. I stretched before I went to sleep. The first week hurt so bad I became terrified of ever going backwards and starting over. But more than the pain, I was finally facing something I had avoided for decades. My body had been asking for my attention for a very, very long time. And for the first time, I was listening. That experience taught me something I wasn't expecting. I thought I was rebuilding a knee. I thought I was rebuilding a shoulder. What I didn't realize was that I was rebuilding a relationship. The relationship I had with my own body. For most of my life, self-care felt like something extra. It was luxury. Something I would get to after work was finished, after the bills were paid, after the children were cared for, after everyone else's needs were met. The problem was, there was always something else that needed my attention. Another responsibility, another problem to solve, another person who needed me. So self-care stayed at the bottom of the list for years, maybe decades. Looking back, movement became one of the first ways I started changing that. Not because I suddenly loved exercise, not because I had some grand fitness goal, because I finally realized my body needed me too. The same way a child needs care, the same way a relationship needs attention, the same way a garden needs water. My body needed care. Movement became one of the ways I offered care. A walk, a stretch, a few minutes outside, not because I had to, because I deserved it. And that realization was surprisingly difficult. I had spent so much of my life caring for everyone else that caring for myself felt unfamiliar. Damn, it felt selfish. But eventually I realized something. Self-care isn't selfish. Neglect isn't noble. Running yourself into the ground doesn't make you stronger. Taking care of yourself isn't abandoning others. It's ensuring that there's enough of you left to continue showing up for the people and the things that you love. At first, I usually started my walks with earbuds, music, podcasts, something to listen to, something to occupy my mind. But somewhere along the way, I started taking them out. Not because there was anything wrong with what I was listening to, but because I realized I'd spent most of my life surrounded by noise. Work, television, phone calls, responsibilities, social media, podcast, advice, opinions. There was always something competing for our attention. What I wasn't used to was silence. What I wasn't used to was being alone with myself. So I started walking without distractions. Just me, the road, the wind, the birds, the sound of my footsteps, and my thoughts. At first it was uncomfortable, I won't lie, because when everything becomes quiet, the things you've been avoiding have a way of introducing themselves. The grief, the fears, the exhaustion, the questions, the emotions you've been outrunning. And I think that's why many people struggle with this movement. Not because they're lazy, not because they lack discipline. Many people aren't avoiding movement, they're avoiding being alone with themselves. The more I walked, the less I felt the need to run. I wasn't trying to solve every problem. I wasn't trying to fix every emotion. I was simply allowing myself space to exist. Some of the most important conversations I've ever had happened during those walks. No audience, no podcast, no music, just me and a back road. Sometimes I prayed, sometimes I cried, sometimes I laughed, sometimes I sat with questions I couldn't answer. Sometimes I simply watched the sunset and allowed myself to exist without producing or fixing, earning or proving anything. Looking back, I thought those walks were strengthening my legs. In reality, they were strengthening my relationship with myself. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I can only tell you what happened to me. The more I moved, the better I felt. Not just physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I slept better. My thoughts slowed down. I felt calmer. I felt present, more grounded. The more I researched, the more I learned there were actual reasons for this. Movement improves circulation, supports sleep, helps regulate stress, supports digestion, improves mood, supports mental clarity. The body and mind were never separate systems. They have always been working together. Many of us are trying to heal our thoughts while completely ignoring our bodies, but the body is a part of the healing process too. Many people today are living in survival mode, always rushing, always worrying, always carrying something. The body responds to all of it. One of the things I found fascinating was learning that movement can help the body release some of the tension it stores. Tension it stores. Walking, stretching, yoga, Pilates, gentle movement, deep breathing. Not because movement solves every problem, but because movement reminds the body that it's safe. That it's safe enough to soften. Safe enough to breathe. Safe enough to relax. Safe enough to release. Some of us are trying to think our way out of anxiety while our bodies are begging to move. Not because movement cures anxiety, but because movement gives the body an outlet. Stress, release. Stress, release. Modern life often looks like stress without release. Movement helps complete this cycle. For most of human history, movement wasn't exercise. Movement was life. People walked, worked with their hands, carried water, built homes, worked fields, climbed hills. Movement wasn't something people scheduled. It was simply part of being human. We can go an entire day barely moving. The body adapts. Muscles weaken. Flexibility decreases. Balance declines. Energy drops. The body becomes efficient at whatever we repeatedly ask it to do. As if we spend years sitting, the body becomes very good at sitting. And sitting doesn't prepare us for living. Strength isn't about appearance. It's about capability. It's about participating in your own life, carrying groceries, traveling, playing with grandchildren, great-grandchildren, being able to recover from illness, remaining independent as we age. Movement is freedom, and freedom is worth protecting. The goal isn't to look 20. The goal is to live fully when you're 60, 70, or 80. The choices we make today become the abilities we have tomorrow. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing they must change everything all at once. But healing rarely works that way. Neither does movement. What if your goal wasn't 5 miles? What if your goal wasn't a gym membership? What if it was simply to walk around the block? Just once. Tomorrow, you walk maybe once. The next day, maybe you walk around twice. A week later, maybe 3 times. Small changes repeatedly can become extraordinary over time. One lap around the block matters to your body, to your heart, to your joints, to your nervous system, to your future self. You don't have to start where someone else is. You only have to start where you are. Every step counts. Every stretch counts. Every walk counts, and every act of care counts, because every step is a vote for the person you're becoming. 27 years after that basketball injury, I thought the lesson about my knee was over. It wasn't. The lesson was that our bodies are speaking to us all the time, sometimes through energy, exhaustion, stiffness and pain, sometimes through healing. Movement became one of the ways I finally started listening, not because I was trying to become someone else, because I was trying to take care of the person I already was, maybe for the first time. You only get one body, not a perfect body, not a bikini body, not an unbreakable body, just one. And it deserves your attention. It deserves your care. It deserves your kindness, because your life is worth showing up for. Take a deep breath. You are loved. You are safe. You are worthy. And I believe in you. Always.